Good morning. It's Friday, and it's usually a 2 for Tuesday, isn't it? But it's a 2 for Friday. Why the heck not? Welcome back to Benevolent Banter. There's the camera I'm supposed to be looking at. What a wild ride. I have one of my absolute favorite, most special, most beloved humans on the planet who isn't my wife. I mean, you don't even look like her, in the room today, and I'm so excited to have him here. As we do with every guest, I'm going to allow, I would love it if you would please, look how nervous I am. You're like the person I know best, and I'm so nervous. I just love him. Can you please introduce yourself?
Oh, of course. Kia ora, Cassie. Troy Rawhiti. See, so now I'm nervous and I can't even say my own name. Got the Troy part out. Four letters.
Troy.
Troy. Ko Troy Rawhiti Connell tōku ingoa. And among other things, I'm a writer and a reader, a sleeper, an occasional eater. Goodness.
Picker, a grinner, a lover, a sinner.
And a midnight talker. Never. Don't worry, Mum.
Mum's wondering.
No, I know. No, never. I never try to make sure Mum wonders about me. Even at age 38. Isn't that funny?
No, I try to make sure my mom's real comfortable with the fact that I'm not doing that stuff either. I'm sure she's like, oh, God, you couldn't surprise me now.
We are good kids, I think.
Okay, so you're a writer, you're a reader, you're a thinker.
Is this where we go? Now, how have I put those things to work?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So
and how does it fit in the context of why and how you're sitting here today?
The short answer is because you told me to. But the long answer is that means obviously somewhere along the way we had to kind of meet and intersect and realize that we had, really great matching
Oh, my
taste.
God. Look at this. I actually was getting dressed this morning, and I thought, surely he's not going to wear that shirt.
I got dressed this morning and thought, okay, I need something that's outside of my usual kind of black or white or black and white. And we were just at that point in the laundry cycle where the red and white really kind of spoke to me, as it often does. I've got a red and white striped beanie, but there was absolutely no way I was pairing it with the rest of the outfit. Okay, so how did I get here? Like my primary trade, I guess, is communications. It's not necessarily limited to writing, and I say that because I've taken quite a reasonably winding path. People like to talk about the dark side and the light side. I have walked right through the middle of the shadow of the Valley of Death. I was a journalist for about a decade all up, and then you kind of splice in the middle. So I was at the New Zealand Herald for 6 years, looking after their social and other digital stuff.
You brought all that to life, didn't you? The social stuff?
Yeah, I gave it a good injection. There was a little bit beforehand, but this was real new. Like, Facebook exists and Twitter exists, and it's the year 2009, and we're just gonna put stuff there and see stuff. Yeah. A year later is when I got tapped with it, and I was just asked to kind of build conversations around news and grow the brand. There was
cool.
It was super cool. There was no kind of like blueprint on how to do it.
Yeah.
But there were quite a few kind of catalytic events that just served as crash course after crash course I came in halfway through the 2010 FIFA World Cup when the All Whites were performing really well.
That's right.
Yep.
That's right.
So it was a case of, all right, doing this, everyone else in the country is awake, so am I. So that was a really good grounding. Unfortunately, 2 months later, the first of the Canterbury earthquakes happened.
Yes.
Real early in the morning.
Yes. Yes.
In
It's a
September
3 a.m.
2010.
wasn't it?
Yeah, 2 or 3 a.m.
Yeah. I was actually in Christchurch when that happened.
Seriously?
Yeah. It was the most, growing up in Southern California, we had lots of earthquakes, the rolling, but being in Canterbury, I've never felt a house just go up and down. So it was just, sorry, we digress. Yep.
No. I think that's still right on point. So there were a few quick things to learn there about correct information versus the sensational aspect, which was already out there, but it was nothing compared to 2 months later when the Pike River mine disaster happened. And that was real quick. And the difficulty with that is we were at that point in the development of the news business where the global financial crisis has just happened and had taken a lot of the money and resource out of newsrooms. So suddenly we were having to do more with less and we were having to do it faster.
Yes.
I will always believe it's one of the reasons that clickbait rose to because it was cheap and easy to do and fast, and it was meant to be seen as this way to get people inside the tent to look at the other stuff.
That's right.
And so
that is the strategy of every business still.
10 years on, we haven't cracked it, but the money keeps spinning, so why do you need to? But that was a difficult one, I think, for publisher and public alike, because by this point we were used to info, and with this mine, often for hours, sometimes days at a time, there was nothing. Absolutely nothing. And so managing that became an exercise. And I remember after that, thought, right, we'll have a little bit of a summer holiday, maybe at the end of February. Really, really quiet. Nothing ever happens at the end of February. Next year we will have the 10th anniversary of a very, very significant thing to happen at the end of February, which was the Feb 22 Christchurch quake.
One of those, I know exactly where I was.
Where were you?
I was at AA Travel, and I was doing all of the content around the very traditional stuff, so the writing for some of the magazines, the out-of-home, all of that kind of stuff, and tutuing around on social media. They basically went, you've got the American accent, you're in charge of the social media, which was amazing at the time. But when everything started to go down, I was going through the Twitter feed because obviously we had people through AA Travel working in Christchurch, and it was Twitter that alerted us to something was going on. And it was the first time in my life where I remember going, holy shit, we can't talk to anybody on the phones. The phone lines are down. Nobody's answering their mobiles. But I'm seeing stuff coming through Twitter. I'm seeing pictures being uploaded. Oh my God, it's bad. I'll never forget that.
There's interesting kind of parallel, isn't there? You've got, on one hand, massive amounts of communication. On the other hand, you've got a massive breakdown in communication.
Yes.
And that became a bit of a definer of the work that I ended up doing after those quakes. 12:51 on that day, I was in Rotorua, and I just visited a church on the lakeside where inside they had panels talking about a lot of the different trials and tribulations and travails of local Māori from all the way up in Northland down into the Bay of Plenty.
Wow.
And I just stepped outside after visiting there, and I've got a very limited understanding of how distant events under your feet can affect what happens under your feet, 500 kilometers away.
Yeah.
So I'm just standing there and I feel it's like this little jittery jolty thing. And I'm like, oh, well, I'm Māori. Maybe I just had some like weird little wairua tap. Don't know. Because where I was just out of mobile range. Got in the car and started driving off to our Te Puke, where we were going to stay for a few days. And at some point, I drove into mobile range, and it was the Herald newsroom.
Yes.
They told me this happened. Can you come back to work as soon as possible?
You probably were tapped, like actually. Wow.
So I had to stop at, I think it was the Kiwi Fruit Centre.
I know exactly what it is, yeah.
Yep. To ask if I could borrow their phone because my battery was down and the signal was really patchy. And I said, look, I'm really, really sorry. I'm an editor from the Herald. Can I please use your phone? And no one in that centre had any idea what was going on. So I had to connect with the office to understand what was happening, get my head around the scale of it, but also break the news to quite a few people there.
Yeah.
And again, all the information in the world, none of the information in the world.
Ooh.
And that became fairly critical kind of the next day. I get in, and really fast, you had like a couple of core narratives jump up. And so I figured, well, we've got an entire website to tell all of the stories. I'll just fixate on what are the criticals? What is civil defense doing? What is the Red Cross doing? If you want to donate, where do you go?
Yes.
But while all that was going on, you saw these core narratives come up. Death toll.
Yes.
The state of certain heritage and scale buildings that were about to fall over.
Yes.
And kind of the periphery utility stuff, where the lines were out, where the water was out.
Yeah.
And there was this big dead spot in the information, and we all kind of noticed it. And I think it was actually a fellow journalist, Phil Taylor, who was, I think, from Christchurch. He noticed it first. There was absolutely no information coming out of the eastern suburbs. Everyone, all the stuff that I just mentioned, it was all about the CBD, where, look, a lot of the loss of life had happened, but it's where the attention was, but also where the connectivity was.
Yeah.
There was this huge dead spot out east where, as we know today, a lot of that was red zoned. And so after a few days, we were like, well, what can we do about this?
Yeah.
Next thing you know, I'm down there with a phone.
Oh my gosh.
A Tumblr account fed into Storify.
Those were the days.
Those were the days. Twitter occasionally pulled in, and Facebook as well. And it's like we had reporters doing the standard stuff. So I just went pretty much door to door and welfare centre to welfare centre, going, first of all, hi, I'm from the Herald. And they'd say, really? You know we're here? Yes, we know. That's why we're here.
Yeah.
What's going on? And especially the welfare centres, what do you need?
Yeah.
What do you need? And what was really interesting about this, and I try to think about this in every kind of communications work that we do, campaign, anything that's broad brush, it's never broad brush, because people in, let's say, Aranui, they needed completely different supplies to what people needed in New Brighton.
Amazing.
Over here, canned food. Over here, nappies and solar lights. The one commonality, portaloos.
Yes.
Everybody wanted portaloos.
Yeah. It's something that is necessary.
But again, that lack of communication between town and the eastern suburbs, I mentioned to them, there are dozens and dozens and dozens of portaloos outside the Rickerton Mall. That kind of makes sense, but you might want to have a word to your council.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's I remember that time, and I remember how it's interesting how you mentioned that there was the all of it, none of it. And it kind of feels like today we're still like that, even though we're inundated with information.
I think we live our lives on a kind of rail system that way, and we can choose to jump in and jump out. Actually, another thing that was really striking about that Christchurch visit, a lot of people weren't able to charge their phones. There were a lot of people offline in the eastern suburbs. The number of times someone asked if they could borrow my phone to update Facebook to say I'm alive was
like it
still
feels so
sobering.
Basic. Telling my family and friends I'm okay.
Yeah.
I remember that in the days following, because I can't remember how many colleagues we had down there. It would have been a dozen, if not more. And just until we had everybody checked off a list to go, this person's okay and well, this person's okay and well. It was days before we had the entire list where we knew if people were okay or not. And that was heart-wrenching.
Yeah.
And those were just colleagues. So I can't imagine that.
And it was the same in kind of real life as well. I think it was the Friday the week after the quake was the first home game for the Crusaders in the Super Rugby season of that year. And what was really sad about that is they were playing up in Nelson, because the Crusaders' catchment area goes all the way up into Nelson, which is not that far from the Grey District and Pike River. So they were playing in the local colours, which much like we're wearing today, in remembrance of the lost Pike River miners, at the same time as their other base city were dealing with this. And so I thought, well, that's really interesting. Let's go there and just see if rugby really does glue a community together. It was an absolute afterthought. Most people there, it had been the first time they'd seen each other since the quakes. So it was just a big, big love-filled hooey for people who had not seen each other and were just really glad that they were alive.
Wow.
And then occasionally they turn around and yell at the ref.
Who was the ref? Do you remember that? poor
Actually,
fella.
I think it was Wayne Barnes. Who
Really?
Yeah, the
Ooh.
2007 quarterfinal ref.
Ooh,
I might be wrong, but I think it might have been. No doubt. Please, if I'm wrong, correct me out there.
Oh, you will. It's on social media. You will be corrected.
So across all of those things, I developed my transferable skills.
Yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
A couple of years after that, I went to a company called Telecom that's no one's heard of because they're called Spark now.
I remember that, man. That was a big time. That switch over.
That was a whopper. That was a 6-month kind of from the day we announced it to the day we did it. It was 6 months, and that whole thing was really important for building customer relationships.
Yeah,
the whole thing. Just we're listening, we're acting, we're delivering, so that when we arrive, it's a whole completely different experience to what you knew, and that meant there was a huge mind shift internally.
Yeah.
Not so much for me because I was new coming in, and I'm like, well, if you're bringing me in, something's got to be happening. But it was great, to see a whole lot of people get on board with something that was big and made sense. And when it got released into the world, whoosh. 3 years of that, I returned to journalism to help get a digital venture called Newsroom.
Oh, I've heard of it. I've heard of it. It's a little thing.
They're doing pretty well. I think they are. They were reigning and defending website of the year after their first go. They shared it with stuff, but that was really exciting to get off the ground.
Yeah. What did that look like for you to go from corporate back into like starting up a new journalistic entity?
You appreciate a fully stocked stationery cupboard is the first thing. So I think we got to. I think it was our team lawyer was the one that had like the warehouse stationery cards. We were like, James, you're our best friend. But it was really interesting because on one hand, we knew we had, because we had quite a few exclusives going into it. The eggs one was the first one to go out. So we knew we had a great idea. We knew we had a great few stories to work on that would buy us the permission to do more. Yeah. But it was really interesting balancing that up against if you forget to get toilet paper, someone's got to nip up the road to the little Asian fruit market to get some more. Yeah, it was absolutely total startup. But that was really neat because I think it, even though you're fixated on your work, it taught us to fight for each other. We did have to fight for everything. We had to fight sometimes to keep each other focused. We had to fight for audience because we'd started from day one with 0. Yeah. And it was my job to grow it. Yeah, it did okay.
I think you did a pretty good job.
But again, that's about looking at things in the entirety. The news was good, the platform was good, the people were good, the audience knew how to find us, and we knew how to find them. Yeah. Really simple stuff that even if you're a startup, you can do. It's just about putting the right tools, or the right enough tools, sometimes a stapler, into the hands of people who know what they're doing and are really highly motivated to do it. Yeah. And you're away.
There would have been a belief, I guess, in the purpose of why you were doing what you were doing.
Oh, yeah. Which was interestingly kind of like reverse validated because I remember there being reported a pitch doc that got leaked and it went around the block, and it was really interesting watching the reactions to that because often when pre-release thinking gets out, it can be savaged. Yeah. By and large, the reaction I remember being, there was the odd cocked eyebrow, but also a lot of hell yeah.
That's cool.
And so that's quite neat when you get like pre-out validation. Of course, then you have to
live up to it. Yeah. You have to create it.
Yeah, totally. I think we did all right.
I would agree with that statement. So Newsroom, and then where did you head off to?
Then I worked somewhere a little closer to home, a little retail business called the Warehouse Group. Yeah,
you might have heard of it if you're in New Zealand.
Yeah, so the group looks after the warehouse stationery, Noel Leeming, Torpedo 7. Whenever I talk about it, they always bounce my head from side to side because it feels like there's so much to cover. The market, one day. So it's a lot of stuff. Yeah. And again, the age of transferable skills. my title there presently is head of copy, which means I'm the head of duplicating stuff at the printing station. No. So I'm a
10 copies.
12 copies. Oh no, they're all in color. I've just blown the budget. No, so I look after everything from campaign thinking to TV and radio script writing to annual report frame ups to speeches to store signage. If words go
Internal,
on it,
external. Eternally busy.
Yeah. So to the point where the closest thing that's coming to my mouth this hour is not lunch. It's this. Is it edible?
Can I eat this?
Well, we were told before,
hungry.
treat it like an ice cream.
Yeah.
I'm like, so is there
It's like-
a chocolate at the bottom of the cone?
No, but we tried to do once this ASMR and go.
Oh, really? How did that go? Did you
It
get
was
someone
shit,
running in
so-
from the other room, clutching the ears, just going, no!
Sorry, Simon. Simon in the other room.
Sorry. We're sorry right now.
Yeah. So warehouse group. Oh my gosh, how long have you been there?
I have been there since November 2017. So according to my
Almost
dodgy
3 years.
math, closing in on 2.5 years.
2.5 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which are, to put that in the millennial employment context, an eternity.
A lifetime. Which is funny because I've been at the warehouse group for almost 2 years, not quite. And yesterday was my last day. And the saddest thing was to leave people like you because I don't know. I'd be interested to see how you feel about it. For me, work in this day and age is so much more fulfilling if you enjoy, and maybe it's all days and age. I shouldn't say it's just in this day and age, but it is so much more fulfilling when you can go to a place and just be around your friends and people you respect and you know you'll be able to be challenged by. I've worked in places where, cool, you get the title, you get the paycheck. You get the halo effect of both the title and the paycheck. But I don't know. I feel like work has been much more fulfilling when I go to places, not just following you, Troy, but just with people that you enjoy working with.
I'll quote back at you a thing from your leaving speech where you said, "Oh, this is New Zealand. We'll see each other on the street anyway." So I...
Not intimating that I'm going to be living on the street soon because I'm unemployed.
No, I trust you made good plans. No, about that, I mean, Auckland especially, but New Zealand really is such a small town that I kind of think about these things again in their entirety in terms of seeing you again. Like everyone else gives you big, tearful hugs. I just leaned in your ear and said, "I'll see you tomorrow."
to which our colleague Smedowa said, "Why the fuck does he get to see you tomorrow? Why don't I get to see you tomorrow?" And I was like,
Slot her in for another podcast.
That's right, I will.
But see, there's that. I mean, our relationship goes back a decade, so
crazy,
we
yeah.
weave a lot. So, and it was an interesting one because from that point of view, it's like, I don't get to see you every day, but
We'll see each other.
We're going to
Yeah.
see each other. That's fine.
Yeah.
But you're absolutely right about the difference that the people you work with can make. And I think as just a straight up employee, the work is so much easier when you like and trust and get along with the people that are beside you. It's a thing I'm really conscious of when I'm either hiring directly or
Yes.
advising on
Yes.
hire. It's like, yep, they might have all the skills, but if they can't get on with the person next to them, or it's going to be really hard on them, you got to bring that
Yeah.
to consideration. So
Yeah.
I think the entirety of the work family needs to be thought about,
Yeah.
and it's always really, really lovely when that team sits quite nicely.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about something that's not work. What would you like to talk about?
Hasn't my brain goes straight to dogs?
I was actually just going to say, let's talk about Albie.
All right.
So Troy, the first time I met Troy, he gave me the biggest and best hug ever. And I was like, okay, this guy's going to be my friend. And then we became twins, like actually twins. But the one thing that has remained absolutely consistent throughout both of our millennial lives through like marriages and divorces and kids and jobs has been your love for your puppers. Tell us about that.
So I've had... So what am I now? It's funny when we talk about being twins. We were born within a week of each other, so it's like ludicrously true.
Yeah.
Curly hair, stripes, glasses, and just that time of year. It just works
just
out.
Brilliant.
And so for most of those 38 years, there's been a dog in the family. So it was my mum that really got into them, and I got on board really quickly. And so from pretty much just about day one, when I moved out of home, there's been a dog in the house, which I think it's good as I think it's good as a grown up to have somewhere for your love to go, and we all do this in different ways. Some people throw it into themselves and they travel. Others have kids and their love goes there. Anna and I, we're childless, and so our love goes clearly to each other, and but also to our dogs, which is really, really, really cool because before Foley, who was Albie's predecessor, we lost him a couple of years ago at 12. Anna had never really been an animal person, full stop.
Are you serious?
Absolutely serious. There were some fish that did not really last the distance.
Yeah. Okay.
But beyond that, there wasn't much of a relationship. And I remember taking Foley around to her flat for the first time. And she's like, I'm going to take him for a walk. And I'm like, he has never in his life tolerated someone on the first meeting, let alone tolerated someone taking him for a walk without me. I trust you.
Good luck.
But also I just want to see how this goes. But it's really interesting. There's a lot of quackery that can happen with dog experts and whatnot. But the one thing that I'll give old Cesar Milan credit for is he would talk about how dogs respond to calm assertion.
Yeah.
If you behave like you're the boss,
That's right.
most dogs will fall in line.
That's right.
Anna is the model of calm assertion.
She is indeed.
So she just took she took Foley by the lead, and they went off for a walk around Devonport.
Oh my gosh.
Absolutely no question. And so it was really joyous watching those two get along.
Yeah.
For the 2 years that they were together before we lost Foley. So Albie is actually Anna's. We made the decision that, you know what, you pick the next one. And she enjoys him because he's a little dark.
Yes.
He's a little dark. They're both Slytherins.
Yes.
I'm the sole Gryffindor in our house. He will wreck something because he's a puppy and he's at that age, and she might chew him out for a little bit, but then she'll be like, "You're evil." It's good.
It's funny.
Yeah, it's so funny. I'm picking up pieces of my Nintendo Switch, going, "This is not funny."
Dude, Albie.
I couldn't believe it. That was just on Monday, but no, I mean they're just. This is where I add absolutely no value to any podcast whatsoever, because sometimes when I attempt to sum up what a dog means to me, all I can give you is a smile and silence.
That's fine, because if you tried to sum it up, I'm sure I would start crying.
I'm just about to.
Yeah.
The dogs that I've had have meant the absolute world to me. The last two before, it's funny, people often look at my arms and go, "Whoa, what are those about?"
Yeah.
These are actually both dog tattoos.
Yeah.
You wouldn't believe it.
Yeah. I would, but only because you told me.
Only because I told you, and now I get to tell you. So I had Foley and Fiona. Foley, aforementioned, he was a Mastiff cross. He was mostly linear. Yeah. He was an introvert dog, a little bit random. So I went to my artist, and it's always the same guy. And I told Ace, I said, "Look, you know Ace."
I know Ace.
I said, "Look, I showed pictures and video of Foley and said, this is how he moves, this is how he thinks.
Oh,
I just like something that just shows just capture his motion, capture something in red that's his relationship with Anna, and just go with it." So we got this kind of like weird cosmic thing going on with
It's beautiful.
Anna the Comet's dancing around. Foley had really distinctive eyes. Yeah. Ace couldn't help putting one in. Fiona was an English bulldog.
Yes.
And lost her, she moved away to Canada a few years ago and lost her a few months after Foley, and she was the runt of her litter, which is still to say she was built like Donkey Kong Jr. She was incredibly powerful.
Donkey Kong Jr.
Yeah, she was named after Shrek's Fiona.
Yeah,
that was the sitter, but she was incredibly powerful and all over the place and incredibly random, but occasionally had moments of like real delicate sweet grace, and that's why we've got this whole like big thick motion.
That's cool.
And just little bits. Yeah. So I didn't want dog portraits, I didn't want paws.
Yeah.
I just said, look, here's the energy, slap it on the skin, please.
That's so cool.
And I guess if anything, really to sum up what dogs mean to me, I don't have to say a word. I just need to put my forearms up.
Yeah. So when are you going to get Albie's?
I always choose the same artist, so
When he's available.
Exactly, very, very long wait list. But also there becomes a matter of, do I want to do Albie in the same way? The answer is probably yes.
Yeah, yeah.
And I would, to me, you'll notice also this arm's colourful.
Yeah.
This arm is not.
Yeah.
I think Albie's got a dash of colour, so he would go on this arm.
Yeah.
Quite what that looks like yet, I don't know. But then again, I didn't design that, and I didn't design that. I just informed it. So when there's time, I'll be like, here's a limb, here's some video,
here's some space.
Have at it.
Go. Ace will be awesome. Ace will be ace at that. I wanted to switch gears a little bit and talk to you about the study you've been doing recently around te reo and learning to speak te reo. Because as your friend and somebody who's known you for a long time, it's been a beautiful thing to watch you not have to sprint away from the office to make it to class, but just like to almost come into the space that you're taking into the world. I feel like the man that sits before me now is this beautiful evolution. And I feel like, how long have you been doing it now? About a year or so? 2 years now. What was the intentional leap you took towards going to learn?
So there was a soft catalyst and there was a kind of hard catalyst, because I think one thing that becomes really apparent really quickly when you learn te reo Māori is that the language is not separate to tikanga and culture. They come together.
Yes.
And I think that's how you best understand not just the way that the language is formed, but also the way that the language is used, right down to really basic things like, let's come to my soft catalyst. A few years ago, I just wrapped up speaking at a conference, and I went off to the little boys' room, and I was doing little boys' room things. And then as I was on my way out, someone else stops me and goes, "Oh, hey, loved your kōrero. Where are you from?" And I'm like, "Auckland?" He's like, No. Where are you from?" And I'm like, "Sorry, you want me to be more specific?" "Henderson," because I grew up out west. No. Where are you from? And the third time, like, oh, got it. And I didn't know.
Yeah.
Wow. I was aware, for instance, that, mum whakapapaed back up to Ngāpuhi.
Yeah.
That's all I knew. But their area is huge. Yeah. I couldn't tell you. Yeah. And so I remembered that, but didn't really do anything about it because there was no impetus.
Yeah.
It wasn't until I was at Newsroom a couple of years later, and I was corresponding with, I sent an email to somebody at Auckland Council, where by then they had done a lot of work in getting the reo in there. And I got an email back from someone I knew really, really, really well. But this email, half of it was in the reo, and I couldn't understand it.
Wow.
And it was at that moment I thought, hold on.
Yeah. Something
is shifting. And it wasn't just a case of crap or get off the pot and catch up. It was, and it's not like often we have to chase the future. I felt like with this, we had to chase something that we should have had all along. Yeah. So.
Ooh.
So that, because it wasn't something that we because I'm a Rawhiti, we have Māori in us, but it wasn't. So we were very, very super typical urban Māori in that we didn't speak it or anything. We had limited stories about my grandfather, who was Māori. My grandmother was Pākehā. But not a lot of it came down to the grandkids. And we lost Nan so early that I think a door kind of closed on that. I'll come back to that door later. But it felt like a door kind of closed on that, and it's like, oh, okay, well, we'll just grow up, and that's all right. Who we are is who we are, and our experiences are what they are. But in that moment, with an email from someone in comms at Auckland Council, would you believe it? Something switched on.
Wow. And
so, we're really fortunate, I think, to have certain people in our lives. And so, someone that I know who used to be a broadcaster at, still works for RNZ, but was a broadcaster at RNZ on Morning Report, Guy Espiner, every day.
Yes.
He's a fantastic user of the language. And I just went to him and said, Guy, where are you learning? And he pointed me to Te Wānanga, and so I enrolled there, and that's where I did my learning. And even now, after 2 years, I'm really conscious that I'm like a 4-year-old.
It's
The glass is on the table. The shoes are on the feet.
Yeah.
How are you? You know,
Yeah.
but a thing that I had noticed along the way was, and it snapped me right back to when I was first just learning to speak English. And I don't know if this was your experience, but it was when I was really, really little. You learn your ABCs and you learn your words, and you may not be told explicitly what your parts of speech are, but you understand what they are. And you might be sitting there and the grown-ups are at the table, they're having a conversation. And the first stage, you know the words they're using.
Yes.
The second stage, you know a bit more of the words they're using, but someone will tell a joke and they'll all laugh, but you don't know why. Because you're not developed enough to understand nuance and context and sarcasm. And then you grow up a little bit more, they laugh and you laugh. And so where that becomes relevant to my development in Te Reo Māori, as much as I can, I will listen to full kōrero in Te Reo.
That's awesome.
And again, I noticed the same thing happening. I didn't really notice what was happening until I realized I wasn't getting the jokes. But it started with listening, you're understanding parts of speech, you're understanding what was being said, but you missed the phatic element behind it. Then you went up to, haha, they're laughing. There was a session at the Auckland Writers' Festival last year. Scotty Morrison was conducting it, and it was all in Te Reo. And everyone on stage is laughing, people in the crowd are laughing, and I'm going, like, I wasn't even going to...
really want to laugh.
I really want to laugh. I wasn't even going to pretend to laugh. I'm like, no, I'm just going to shut up, keep my ears open, and just listen for any hook, and it didn't come, and that was fine. Later on that year, I was present in another all Māori lecture, and this time I could laugh.
That's cool.
And
That is cool.
I couldn't believe it. I felt like a right little grown-up, a right little 5-year-old.
Yeah.
Which is really challenging when people go, hey, can you write like a full 8-minute kōrero? And I'm like, in English, that is tricky enough.
Yeah.
In a language that is my second one that I'm really, really working on, yeah, sure, give me about 3 weeks and 5 days of intense interrogation while I figure it out.
Immersion is so important.
Absolutely.
There were 2 people, and I wish I could remember who they were. I ran into them last year. I think it was at VidCon in Melbourne, and I think they were from Te Wananga. And one of the fellows had decided for the full month, I think it was of September, that he was only going to speak in Te Reo. And so he had somebody traveling with him that was making sure that all of us who couldn't speak it spoke it. And what I remember was feeling a few things. First of all, we were in Australia, and I have an American accent, so there was no reason for them to think that I knew anything about New Zealand culturally, or that I lived here for 18 years. And so when the fellow came up to me and introduced himself, I felt cool with kia ora. I felt cool with him telling me who he was and where he was from. His pepeha. Sweet. Good. Clock that. But everything else was over my head, and I felt like the last 18 years of my life in New Zealand as a part of this culture, what the hell have I been doing? I felt kind of guilty. I felt a little bit of shame that I didn't understand. But what happened was he continued on without even a blink. And the person who was translating came up and said, we're from New Zealand. This is what we're doing. And I'm the translator. And I thought, what a fucking cool thing. This dude, and apparently he'd been all over the world too. It wasn't just Australia where people might guess the cultural context of Māori. And wow, it must be such a trip to just be immersed all the time, because without that immersion, it's so hard to grasp what we were talking about, the nuance.
I think it's the most effective way, and I'm dying for some immersion. But in the absence of that, because Auckland life, very hard to do unless you can commit the time to it.
Yeah.
And also, I think if the classes are available, it just doesn't quite work for me right now. So the burden falls on you to immerse yourself as much as possible. Yes. And it's funny thinking about your experience in Australia. Anna and I, for our honeymoon at the end of 2018, so 1 year into study, across the United States. And I remember about 2 weeks in, it's a bit the same as someone who works out and then stops for a week and they feel like that. Oh, I've really got to flex it again.
Yeah.
No one up there speaks it.
No.
So I ended up having little dialogues with myself. Like I would do a thing, and then I'd say it in English and then translate it to myself, and that was kind of just enough to keep my reo on life support until I could come home and study again. But I think I mean, we've got to be really, really, even though we're in a state of resurgence, or for want of another word, it's been at near death and on life support for so long that use keeps it alive.
Yeah.
Full fluency, while fantastic, just use it.
Yeah.
What you know, land it properly. If you weren't sure, if you landed it properly, learn it. And that's, I mean, the most basic way to articulate that is everybody knows exactly how to slot in kia ora.
Yeah.
You can totally then move into other things. Kia ora iti, get ready.
Yeah.
And just build it in to your life, because it's language. It's a tool. You use it.
Yeah.
The more you use it, the better you get at it. You don't need to be able to recite the entire book of kupu from top to bottom.
Yeah.
Awesome if you can get there, but just use the bits that are communicable, that are understandable, develop when you can. That'll keep it alive. Keeping it alive and gives you a chance to keep it strong. And that is much more of a chance than I think many of us had given to Te Reo Māori before this time.
Yeah, it's interesting. My first memories of New Zealand, so almost 2 decades ago, I was so amazed by how interwoven the Māori culture was with the more colonial Pākehā culture. I learned words in Māori quicker than, I grew up in San Diego on the border with Mexico, and I felt like just as intuitively as we could say things in Spanish to each other, Kiwis could say things in Te Reo to each other. So it was a pretty neat thing to see culturally. But I imagine the second you step away from New Zealand, that does become just ridiculously hard.
In a word, aye.
Yeah. Beyond that, you mentioned earlier that when you're learning the language, learning tikanga and understanding maybe the spiritual aspects of the culture, what's your take on, so people like me, I'm new to this place. I long to learn. I want to learn, but I sometimes feel quite embarrassed. I don't want to, appropriate anybody's culture. And there have been a few times where people have been like, not your space. And I'm just like, well, what is it then? Because I really just seek to learn. I seek to understand.
I think there's a big difference between learning and understanding and appropriation. Yeah. But I think part of that learning is understanding what is appropriation.
That's right.
And it's a complex one, isn't it?
My brain just went straight to corporates.
Yeah. So what kind of, how do I put this? What kind of negative experience of appropriation accusation had you had? Can you kind of?
Well, I think from the personal side of things, there's been times where, so I've had a few friends pass away and didn't understand the proper ways to interact culturally, and it's taken one or two people to go, hey, come over here and let me show you how we do this.
Yep.
This is how we wash our hands. This is where we take off our shoes. This is the thing.
Yep.
Whereas there were people who were present who were watching me do things incorrectly, who then would get pissed off.
Yeah.
And it would take one or two people going, oh, you've only been here for a year.
Yep.
You don't know any different. Let me help you.
I mean, regardless whether you're here or 18 years, I don't think that's a behaviour that is limited to people who live in Te Ao Māori in the Māori world.
No.
You will have people from all walks of life and all situations. Some will help, others will watch you drown.
So Mr. Rogers said, right? Yeah. Look for the helpers.
Look for the helpers. And so that's, you don't know until you learn.
Yeah.
And that's the same for cultural practice as it is for a language. And
I love that. Yeah.
I don't think it gets any more black and white than that. You don't know till you learn.
It's the Maya Angelou, right? When you know better, do better.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And you will. It's really not any more complicated than that, I don't think. When I was first learning about, again, also the spiritual world, because it puts into context a lot of I mean, we all, I think, when we were developing cultures, had different ways to explain how the world formed around us.
Yeah.
Or why, in this case, Māori, it's really important that the Whanganui Rua is treated as a living entity.
Yes.
And all of these elements of the Māori world that might seem alien to a foreign worldview.
Yeah.
But if we look at Mount Taranaki, which is a little bit further away from the other mountains on the Central Plateau, but there's a story there about how about how our maunga walk away from each other because they are the embodiments, of different kind of personae. And that's an understanding of, you might not necessarily believe, oh, these mountains grew legs and walked away, but you can understand, all right, when the earth moves, mountains move and
Yes.
crevices are formed, and that's the understanding you have, and you connect it to the scale and size of spirit. With the river, it's the same thing. It gives everyone life, so you treat it with respect. And that is just a different way of approaching what we should be doing with our natural world anyway.
That's
recognizing that we live on it, we take from it.
That's right.
So let's not damage it. They're all really, really common concepts around the world. It's just the way it's been articulated here. So it's not about a whole bunch of hokey, they're asking to look after the river because they're wrong in the head. No, they're saying what we all should have understood along. Protect our natural resources. Shocking, not in the least.
Strangely enough, the world is actually out there and we need to take care of it.
Yeah.
The last interview I did was around religion and sexuality and different belief systems going on. And we were talking about Pacifica and Maori. We were talking about Takatapui and Fa'afa'ine. And we were talking about gender expressions and sexuality expressions. And it was interesting because then we started to kind of dive into, and this was even off camera earlier, about how close all of our kind of Pacific cultures are to even the indigenous cultures where I grew up in the States, and these firm beliefs that go back to the importance of the connection between humans and the earth and the land and the vibrations around us. And I don't know, I've been thinking about it a bit lately, and I feel like we're going back to kind of this renaissance of humanity and environment over tech and the call for profit. What do you think?
I would agree, and I think it is, again, it's us going back to where we should have been rather than kind of blazing something new. I regret to believe that I think some of it is just out of urgency, like, oh crap, we've screwed up, we've got to tidy up the earth before mum comes home, except it's not our parents coming to scold us, it's going to be the actual end of the world. And we're very aware now of how limited we are in time to solve that. But when you talk up, again, West Coast, I think we're all now increasingly conscious in some way or another that it's the Pacific. It's a very, very, very big ocean.
Yes.
But it's our common moana. From here right round up that side of South America to the United States and the West Coast, even around to kind of East Asia. And we've seen that in linguistic drift.
It's amazing.
There's so much commonality between languages. I remember first getting struck when I was studying Japanese. And just recognizing vowel kind of assemblies and stuff that I knew from Māori.
I felt so comfortable coming to New Zealand because growing up we spent a lot of times in Hawaii. So I was just like, whoa, same words, similar concepts. This is... okay, I'm starting to put all of these things together. Yes. Yeah,
we all jumped in waka and went around. So there's a lot of commonality there. And I think out of that, because I think especially when you're an island nation or a waterside nation, your relationship to water in the world is definitely different when you're really, really landlocked. The duty of care is different, and therefore the approach to it is different, which means that there's an extreme commonality. So I'm never surprised when I see just how similarly the Polynesian world has its relationship with the water, but also I think in that we have got to be really highly conscious that same world has been highly subjugated by the colonial world around it. And so again, there's a matter of kind of band together because we have to, but also because we've got such a strong relationship with the waters around us.
It's amazing. There hasn't been a time in my lifetime now where there hasn't been a pull from that Pacific. And sometimes it is quite fun when I go home to it's mostly when I'm at Manhattan Beach and we'll walk all the way to the end of the pier on Manhattan Beach. And we do it with our daughter too, with Chelsea, and we'll look and we'll say, look, New Zealand is right on the other side. It's amazing. One plane trip and we're home. And when you look at the earth like that and you think that body of water, even though it's huge, is as big as it is, but it's what brings us together. It's what's brought us together.
Yep, follow the right path and it's one land mass away.
That's right. Whoa. This is why I like talking to Troy. We can just really shoot the shit, man. I wanted to talk a little bit about millennial life since we just sneak right on into millennial life. So you're married.
Mm-hmm.
I'm married. We're not married to each other, but we're snappy dressers. That's great.
Kia ora.
Yes. Tell me a little bit about this tug of modernity. So we're busy all the time. We're online all the time. We're connected all the time. We have grown up with kind of maybe this boomer mentality of you need to go out into the world and be successful, and you have a job, and you do all of these things that society likes. But then we've got this more millennial mentality where like we need something more important. We need more of a purpose. So tell me about how you balance those things in your life, because you've got your professionalism and you've got the things you're passionate about. You and Anna are very, very intelligent and outspoken about having this kind of balance. So how do you balance those? They're almost like opposing forces.
Oh, look, they're hugely opposing forces, and sometimes I wish we could extend a day to 40 hours, but most of the time I don't, because I really enjoy sleeping. One thing I think is that, because it's interesting, I'm just on this side of the millennial cusp. Anna is very late Gen X, but I often she'll say, "You're not millennial, you're too old, you don't think like one." Like,
sounds like my household. Yeah,
it's right there in the generational data. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I'll take it. But one thing I think about is that every generation has been very busy, and every generation has had its burdens. I mean, if we look at the really, really common ones for us, it's not easy to get into the housing market. It's hard to get a rental if you're under certain if you're in certain situations. Job hunting can either be a breeze or a real difficulty depending on what you do. But think back 2 generations, we give boomers a hard time. Their parents were the war generation.
That's right. I love boomers. I'm just going to put it out there.
Yeah.
It's okay.
And so I think we've all had different things to kind of cope with. So I'm not a big fan of intergenerational sniping, but where I think it gets kind of, it's not us I worry about.
Yeah.
It's the people who come after us, because the sum of human knowledge and the sum of human opportunity and the sum of human technology keeps growing.
Yes.
And I think, I don't know how super the computers in our heads are in terms of how much, quote, bandwidth we have to manage all of that.
Yeah.
So, my day life is pretty busy.
Yeah.
My extracurricular is mostly very busy.
Yeah.
There are times when you just got to go home, make your apologies, cancel your things, fall over and flop.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes it's about maintaining balance. Sometimes it's about trying. A lot of it is about making sure that the appropriate breaks are cut. Cut yourself a break.
That's a huge
on stuff
part.
you can't manage.
Yeah.
Because I think, I don't know. I don't know if we were all raised to be successful in all the things that you do. Role model yourself after this champion and this high achiever, and this person was ducks. Why aren't you? All of those things.
Yeah.
And at the other end of it, especially here, like you've got tall poppy syndrome, but you've also got, oh, here's your participation medal.
Yeah.
There's no way, really, that I've seen yet, unless I just completely overlooked it. There's no trope for like, hey, you're living your life just fine.
That's
you're
right.
managing your stuff.
Yeah.
And you've got full permission to not manage your stuff, because guess what? We all did it. My mum was 34 when her mother died, and those two were really, really close.
Wow.
So I remember my aunts and uncles going, "Oh my God, we're orphans," and I'm older now than she was then, and I think about how would I have managed with 2 kids and the job and dad and his job, and managed all of that at 34.
Yeah.
I've got absolutely no idea.
Yeah.
And my suspicion, I'm sure one day we'll sit down and talk about it, my suspicion is that she did what we were talking about now. Manage what you can.
That's right.
Fail sometimes. It's all right. Just no one's going to turn up with a medal and say, hey,
That's
you're
right.
doing fine.
Yeah. It's interesting, and I asked you that question specifically hoping you'd say something like that, because there was a journalistic piece of study, a scientific study that was done in the States recently around millennials and intergenerational, like what's so different from the last? And basically it pulled all of this data across questions from boomers, Gen X, and millennials. And it was like, I hate to tell you, but all generations go through the same stories. When they're young, they're a bit more free and liberal. And then when they get older and they've got families, they knuckle down and they want to supply, be able to supply food and health and safety to their kids. And then and I was like, yeah, that was the whole thing all along. We're told different stories, I think, now in the age of algorithms that pump us full of our own biases. And that what you were saying, cut yourself a break, is probably the biggest thing for the beta test generation, which I like to call us, to be able to do.
Yeah. They'll also, I think, I don't know how easy it's going to be I don't know how easy it's going to be to do this down the line. Right now, I'm finding Anna's much better at this than I am, but I'm really a lot more judicious about the stuff that I consume. I used to be read everything, learn everything. I have to know every piece of context, every piece of nuance, every update. I have to know.
I'm still in that, and I need to stop.
I put the brakes on it.
Yeah.
Which, of course, after that comes, what am I missing? What am I missing? At the moment now, we have like morning check-ins at home, because I'm up about 3 hours before Anna. And I will say, right, this morning you missed mundane thing number 1, mundane thing number 2, mundane thing number 3, and interesting thing either at the top of the news or the stuff from like the spin-off bulletin or the newsroom daily email. But there's something really interesting there. But it's not, here are 500 pieces, articles. We don't need to know that much stuff. And that conscious management of the stuff that we choose to know.
Of consuming. If we were as good to our minds as we are a lot of the time to what we put into our mouths and to feed our bodies, if we were able to consume differently with our brains.
Yeah. So goodness knows how subsequent generations are going to deal with that. But it's hard to pitch, because what technology will there be? Don't know.
That's it.
What content strategies will there be?
Yeah.
Don't know.
It's also interesting watching Chelsea at 13 years old. She loves to create. So she loves to use tech and tools she hates it when I said, are you making a video? She's like, it's not a video, it's an edit. An edit's completely different to a video, FYI. It's short form and it's fan stuff. It's like fan fiction for a teenager.
Yeah.
But I watch her spend a lot of time being creative and making an art. And she talks to me about it. But when it comes to that connectivity and feeling like she needs to know and be in the know, she and her friends just don't care. I think they've watched her dad and me and Carly and everybody just like this so much, and about how much strife it's caused us, that she is so good and her friends are so good at just putting stuff down. And I don't know if she's just maybe a mature human than me, but she'll just her communication is really good. She'll go, Mom, I would like to have a friend over in the afternoon. Is that okay with you? If so, we'll sort everything out. And I'm like, cool. But she doesn't care about the social media stuff. And I wonder if that's going to be watching us kind of.
I think I cracked it.
Yeah.
At our age, it's our job to make stuff uncool.
It was like John Key. Remember when he did the planking?
The planking? Oh, goodness. Yeah.
Did he really kill planking, though? Or do we think that's just a story that was spun?
Look, I just think that was peak planking. I don't think it was the end of it.
Same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although it's interesting, because I mean it's a thing that's come up quite a lot. The new generation of creators.
Yes.
Now with what's available to us, there are more creators than ever. And I remember the first stats were, as soon as smartphones and mobile phones had photographic capability, there are more pictures being taken every day than there were every decade.
3,000 minutes of content being created for every minute of human life.
Yep. So it's now no longer, okay, so we've got a massive overdose of consumption. There's now there could well be a massive overdose of creation.
Yeah.
Whether or not it's consumed is by the by. That
That's
will
right.
possibly hatch its own dragon egg. Don't know. Here endeth the observation. Good grief.
Yeah. Well, that is an interesting thing, especially, I've spent a lot of time in the last few years going over to places like VidCon in the States. And it is a fascinating thing to watch 70,000 young people with all of their gears connected to every channel, creating, consistently talking. And I'm like, who the hell is going to be watching that? I mean, we've probably got both of our moms watching now, potentially both of our wives. Shout out to the moms and the wives. But it's one of those things where you go, okay, are the kids watching us now going, geez, looking at your phone all the time, being on emails outside of work? Not cool. That's not the way to live life. And I don't know, maybe it's also a millennial thing. And I know Anna's doing her own thing. She's got her own way of living life and working, and she's made her rules, which has made it possible for someone like me to go, okay, I would like to do that too, which makes it possible for my daughter to go. We woke up this morning and Chelsea goes, Mom, it's your first day ever not working for a corporate. How do you feel? I thought for a 13-year-old to say those words, I was like, wow, the way that I've lived my life hasn't only impacted myself.
Yeah. It's funny. Remember when for a moment millennial precious millennials? No, millennial professionals. Goodness, try wrapping that one out quick.
Precious millennials.
There was like a 5-minute period in time when they were called slashies. Remember, it's like I'm an actor / writer / French fry cook.
LinkedIn, now it's just a straight line.
Yep. Anna will kill me for saying this. She's probably at the moment a better practicing millennial than I am, because I just do one thing.
We love you, Anna.
she's a writer and she's a marketer and she's a student. So
amazing.
Yep.
Yeah.
But it's been really, really cool watching her exactly tear herself out of don't want to do corporate anymore.
Yeah.
I want to live life on my terms.
Yeah.
And that means some of my time goes here and some of it goes here. And this bit where I go to school is about where I want to go and who I want to be and what I want to do.
Cool.
And
that's so cool.
That's the most millennial thing ever.
Such an inspiration, Anna.
I'm dead.
DED dead. Hashtag skull emoji. But then also heart eyes emoji for the love. Yeah, I find it a very interesting time in which we're living, but I don't know, feels like we've come to peak tech worship. Feels like just exactly what you're doing is you're going, I'm actually going to consciously consume the information that I feel is most important and impactful to my life right now. And I feel like it's a really good time to kind of move through the world because we are so connected, but we're so much more aware of the importance of this, of the eye to eye, being in the same room, of gosh, how many times have we gone out for beers at random times and gone, hey, so my life just fell apart. And it's like, me too. Twins. Like, holy shit, let's not have a beer for a while. Let's have Negronis instead.
Score. Okay, that's it. Yeah. Upswing, Negronis. Downswing, beer.
Beersies.
So I think we're on Negronis. That's good.
Done.
Done. Goodness. Yeah.
Goodness. What's our time?
I have absolutely no idea. I've been so consciously avoiding technology. I have not been looking at my watch.
We have actually, we're almost an hour in.
No.
Yeah.
No.
No. Us talking for an hour? How often do I pull you into a meeting room and I'm like, I need 5 minutes. And you're like, let me clear your calendar.
Oh, yeah. This is a warm-up.
This is actually. I like to end the show with my guests shouting out somebody who they think, or a few people who they think are kindness warriors in their life. So people who've helped you either to get where you are now, who challenge you and make you your best self. Who's a kindness warrior that you'd like to shout out?
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm going to take the liberty to name a few.
Great.
It's actually the first time I've ever appeared on a podcast. So
what?
Thank you for dragging me into this world. You are one. No,
wow.
Seriously.
Wow. Let's take a minute for this one. You're natural.
Yeah, Spotify told me last year I spent 5,000 odd hours listening to.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
And so that's now hour one.
Considering how much voiceover work you do, that's amazing.
Oh yeah. Oh, it accompanies me when I'm traveling, when I'm working out. If I have no other focus, that's when I'll listen to stuff.
Amazing.
And that's been a whole other switch, just listening to things rather than if I read now, it's a couple of articles in a book.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
Thank you for bringing me into this world. Seriously, definitely Anna, because she spots in me the stuff that I don't. And the stuff that I don't spot is the stuff that I improve and work upon. And so I'm doing some stuff that to me is fairly quite exciting, and there
Yes.
would have been no way to do it without kind of her drive and support, which has been really cool.
Not amazing.
When we look at a few of the things that I've done down the line that just helped me really develop, and I think this is especially when we talk about, oh my God, you've led the corporate world. I think regardless of where you work, I think you never forget the people who line you up with an
Yes.
opportunity or see
Yes.
something that you can do and go, that's crazy enough to work with that person, so let's give it a go. So I think of Tim Murphy at Newsroom. I think of Jeremy Reese back when he was at the Herald, now at RNZ, who just spotted things that needed doing that had I not done them, I sure would have turned out perfectly fine in some other way, but I'm so super glad with the way that I kind of did.
Yeah.
Because I don't know what it's like for other people, but like disclosure, I don't have. Well, I now have tertiary qualifications. I've got 4 levels of Te Reo Māori, but that's it. I don't have a degree in this, a bachelor's in this, a master's in this. So I think even in our, I really push back. I really push against this, and but it used to be, you had to have the piece of paper to get ahead, and because I didn't have one right through my 20s, I'm like, man, I am not going to be able to do anything that I want because I'm not playing by the rules of the world. And I guess the point I want to land here is, thank goodness there are people who do not play by the rules.
I think the two people sitting at this table are much more the rule breakers. There we go.
But yeah, and with that, if you're in a position to throw an opportunity to anyone, if it means we'll make a world of difference to them where it could not have happened for them before, if you can make it happen for someone, make it happen.
Yeah.
Just rip the cord and watch them go.
Yeah. I think we'll leave it with that, because that is the most kindness warrior thing of all to say. I really think that we do rise by lifting others. So thank you, Kia ora,
Kia ora,
for being
thank you.
here. And we'll be back next week. Not me and Troy, but by we.
Why must you turn this into a house of lies?
You're stuck with me. That's the truth. Thank you again for joining us. I really appreciate it. And we'll see you again soon. Have a nice weekend.